Let's move to the panel discussion. Like I said earlier, we're going to be talking about venue video boards. So two of these guys are definitely familiar faces from earlier in the day, but I want to give everybody a chance to not only introduce themselves, but talk a little bit about the scope of what they're involved with at their respective universities, as well as maybe give us a sense of the facilities that you're dealing with. And Kevin, will have you go last. So Jim, if you'd like to start up.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. At Penn State, we have video boards in one Olympic sports venue called Rec Hall. It's where 5 teams compete. We've got 2 control rooms in that facility, one that handles just video board production, and then the other control room is connected to several other venues on campus that will do streaming. We have a center hung video in our basketball facility, and we also have a center hung in our ice hockey facility. And of course, we also have 2 in our football facility. The football, basketball, and ice hockey, those video board productions happen in a control room that's located in the basketball facility. If we ever have a conflict between basketball and ice hockey, where they happen either within an hour of each other or literally at the same time, we just simply send all of our camera feeds, audio, video, back over to our other control room across campus and use that to produce that show. That's our basic layout. We produce about 350 video board shows a year.
All right, Andy.
Hello, Andy Young, Auburn University. And at Auburn University, we have 7 facilities that will have video boards this upcoming year. And I think that services 10 to 11 different sport teams. And then we have 2 centralized control rooms that help run those boards at some of those facilities. And then we also have localized equipment within each venue that can run those boards when we have too many events going on between SEC Network, ESPN, other streaming events, other video board events. So there are times we have 4 to 5 productions going on at once. I believe the number of this past year was maybe 300 total between video board and streamed and linear events. So that's kind of what we do in terms of video board events throughout the year.
All right. Imry?
Okay. Imry Halevi from Harvard. We have 2 video boards. One video board at Harvard Stadium, where we play football and lacrosse, and one video board at our hockey rink. All video board content and really all production from both venues goes to a central control room that's located at the hockey rink, and the central control room can do 2 productions at once. And so if it's just football, we can do football for regional TV or ESPN3 and separately a video board show. Or if it's hockey, we can do that. Or if there's football and hockey at the same time, which happens often, then we kind of try to do our best and figure out how we can take 4 shows and do them out of 2 separate productions from a control room.
And Ryan.
I'm Ryan Brown from Division II Wingate University, and we right now have 1 video board at our football stadium, and football and only football played there at the moment. We were lucky enough to be the first Division II school to sign a ESPN3 streaming agreement, and inside of that came the video board and the production to do that. So we run everything out of a small control room in the football stadium that goes back to the truck that's doing ESPN3 shows. So everything's kind of split up there, but mostly produced from the truck back up top to where they are producing the video board show. So they kind of intertwine together.
Great. And Kevin, talk a little bit about your experience, in the trenches working in these control rooms.
So my name's Kevin Cottam. I'm business development for Ross Video for North America. I've been working in the industry for quite some time. So I work for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. I've been there for about 12 years. CFL football team. Working with Daktronics equipment and such in the past, but we've switched over to some newer technology as of late. So I've got some experience in that, in the production or the game day production background, as well as a lot of studio production, remote production. These days, what I'm working, what I'm doing with Ross Video is helping end users. The gentleman I'm up here with today, and a lot of you in the audience. Looking at new technologies and where we need to go to help that fan experience, to get people, fans more engaged. We're looking at a lot of different technologies, how you're driving the displays, what you're doing with those displays, your game day production, as well as controlling, all kinds of different facets of that production. So I'm kind of involved in a lot of different areas, but I still do the game day production, direct the game day production for the Tiger Cats, and it's been an interesting 12 years, I guess, and we've got some new technology in there today that I think a lot of us, some of the people up on the stand here today are actually using as well. So.
Awesome. All right, before we jump into some questions, I want to give Imry a chance to, he brought some slides of his facilities up at Harvard. So if we could switch over to those, and Imry, if you want to walk us through what we're seeing.
Sure. So this is the video board at the football stadium, obviously. Next. Same thing. So the football stadium is at, there we go. So this is the, no, we can go next. There we go. So this is front bench of the control room for football and hockey. You can see the mixer up front, then replay, TD, director, and then scoreboard on the far right there. Next. There we go. So this is the entire control room. And typically front bench, back bench. The back bench has graphics and another switcher, another replay. So if we have hockey and football at the same time, which is exactly what's going on right now, we split it up so that the front bench is doing one game, in this case hockey, and the back bench is doing football, which gets interesting on our communication system. But typically, if it's just one game at a time, then we'd have the entire control room focused on football for TV, let's say, or football for ESPN3, and the secondary switcher can switch away for video board. So you're typically showing a clean feed for the video board from the TV production going on, and then when we go to commercial or talent is on camera or anything like that, then the secondary switcher can show fan prompts, or I think you saw before, big graphics that have out-of-town scores or trivia. We do some stuff with the marketing team, which we'll talk about. So it has that flexibility of showing the game when it's going on in a full production that's already being produced for TV, but also switching away when needed. Was there another photo? It's just a camera on the field. Hockey, same control room, same setup. And this is the hockey video board, so you can see that we're doing headshots now. Players just skating on the ice, and we're showing their headshots on the right there. I think that's it. So close. So this is an example of how we do two graphics at the same time. So the graphic system on the top, which is just a NewTek live text, is doing the graphics for the video board. So nice and large, and live text on the bottom is for TV that's going on at the same time. So we try to match up the graphics so that the same content is featured on both if relevant. Some content is relevant just for TV or just for the video board, but we never use the same graphic on TV and the video board because it has to be formatted completely differently. And so we have those right next to it, and sometimes it's two operators, sometimes it's just one, and they have to make sure all the graphics are updated and formatted for the correct destination. There we go.
Excellent. Well, you teed up first topic I want to dive into, which is collegiate sports have a very unique challenge in that often you have one control room, or in Andy's case, you have two control rooms that are providing services for a number of different sports and a number of different venues. Let's talk a little bit about how, like you said, say you have two events going on at once. How are you staffing? How are you even just, feeding content to the various video boards? How do you keep it all straight? Let's start off with Imry, if you want to dive a little bit deeper into some of what you were saying, and then we'll move on from there.
Sure. So as I mentioned before, we sometimes have two games at once. So we actually, when we got our central control room, one of the criteria was we can do really good shows here, but either football or hockey, make sure that you never have both at the same time. And then sure enough, next season rolled around, they said, well, we really have to do two at the same time. And so it really takes a lot of planning, a lot of trying to think about where you put certain staff and what positions you staff, and make sure that you do as much planning ahead of time for graphics and for storylines. Because with the confusion of game day, all the activity that's going on around you with two games at the same time, it can really get overwhelming. You really want to make sure that you think about all the contingencies ahead of time and create as much content as you can ahead of time. And create all the graphics, create any features, create anything else you wanna do, and then figure out responsibilities. I mean, the control room is nice, but it's not huge, and so which positions really need to get staffed and which positions do not. I know my counterparts over there from the big schools will talk shortly about engineering and where do you put your engineer and how do you get your engineer to go to all the right locations. We don't have an engineer, and I'm sure Ryan doesn't have an engineer. And you just make the best of it. You have to make sure that you or someone on your team is an expert at what's going on and at the setup, and if you have one game or two games at once, and you just need to make sure that you're aware of the pressure points and where things might go wrong, and make sure that you have solutions in your head should things come up. Right.
Jim or Andy, you want to dive in? How do you handle that?
Sure. Amy, I'm with you. I keep asking for an engineer for Christmas, and for 15 straight years I haven't gotten one. But when it comes to football for us, we have about a 35-person crew, and so that is the top priority. I think when it comes to basketball and hockey, where those might overlap, you have to make both events work. We spend a lot of time recruiting, a lot of time. We never stop recruiting students, staff. We never stop having a job posting, part-time job posting on our website, and it's a reality. So where we are in Happy Valley, it's not a metropolitan area. We've got a great college of communications, but we actually meet with local high schools. And once you have the schedule and it comes out, and then you finally find which events are going to be televised, and then when those game times are actually going to happen, then you just start prioritizing. Of course, you've got so many stakeholders, and marketing and promotions and corporate partnership, those things have to be taken into account. Which events have which obligations, what's required to meet that obligation. All those things you just have to take one event at a time. I wish it was as simple as creating one SOP and just putting it in place, but you have to train your crew to be able to react, act, react again, very much like you do in live television.
Very similar to Jim, we rely heavily on students. We try to schedule our events a good month in advance, just because we have so many events going on at once. For example, if we have baseball and softball going on at the same time, we'll have 2 SEC network events going on, and those require crews of 20 to 30 people each. And then in venue, we'll have video board shows going on, so we'll have 4 different crews going on at one time. And there's days where we can have 80 people working amongst full-time staff, students, and freelance. So we rely heavily on a very large student staff, which is always fluid. It ranges between 60 and 80 students. And then, of course, for football, that's its own beast. We put in a very large video board, which we quickly learned requires a lot of people to run. Our football game day crew is up to about 50 people working, and that's between full-time staff and students. And it just really depends on the event. Some events have 3 people working, and some, like football on the extreme side, have up to 50 people working. But yes, engineering is always eats up a lot of time. Even though we have a full-time engineer now, we did not our first year. So several of my staff members can tell you how much time was eaten up just dealing with the number of facilities and the equipment you have to take care of, as well as the equipment moving every single day. So the wear and tear on our equipment is always breaking down, it seems like. And it's not the fault of the equipment, it's just the fact that we'll have so many events going on in 1 week and have to move it from facility A to B, and then dealing with students who drop things and mishandle things. But that's also a good teaching moment with those individuals.
Can I add one thing?
Absolutely.
One thing that we've done a much better job, and what I'm saying is I'm admitting I did a terrible job for probably about 10 years, and that was really tracking, and I mean collecting data, so that if an administrator came to me and said, okay, in addition to baseball, softball, we now have lacrosse postseason going on, and it's also happening at the same time as the other sports, why can't we stream it? So besides some infrastructure challenges, when you physically run out of people, you run out of people. When you don't have an infrastructure that either has robotic cameras or other things like that, eventually you just sometimes have to say no, and it's a lot easier to do, especially with administrators who sometimes don't want to hear no when you can say, this is how many people it takes to do the show that we believe we've been told we need to do, and this is how much it's going to cost, and that's what we need to do. Having that data at our fingertips has really, really helped us be able to tell our own story. I think it's helped us in securing a little bit more payroll to make things happen, and I believe eventually, who knows, it may help one of our Christmas wishes come true one of these years. But if you don't have the data to back up things that you're asking for, it makes it tough for an administrator that's being hit with financial requests from all over the place. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Awesome, and we're definitely going to dive into sharing resources and managing the expectations of your athletic departments in a second, because I'm sure that's something that everybody is dealing with across the board. Wanted to elaborate a little bit on something that Andy brought up, not just one of the largest video boards, but the largest video board in all of college sports. How do you manage that type of canvas? And what are some of the challenges that you found when all of a sudden you have this gigantic video board and, oh no, we have to program the thing?
I guess you could say that's still a work in progress. We're trying to manage everything we put on there is magnified at such a large scale that nothing goes unnoticed. So we virtually did the same show we did from one year to the next. It's just that the canvas got so much larger. And then we started getting kudos or complaints on certain things that we had always done. So we're really evaluating not just in the off season, but game to game and every day, what makes sense and what worked and what didn't work. And it's just a constant evaluation of what works on a canvas that size, because it's something we had never worked with, and we spent several months developing our plan, and then certain things you do, oh man, that looks terrible, or that looks great. So it's just kind of feeling it out, and I would like to say we're still doing that as we're going into year 2.
And Kevin, I'll bring you in here for a second. Talking a little bit about these ever-growing canvases on both the professional and the collegiate side, how, from a graphics perspective, are you helping these teams to, it's not just, hey, I have a 720p camera, I'm going to take a shot of the field and I'm going to put that up and that's going to be it. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes into those shows to make them dynamic. Talk a little bit about those conversations.
Sure. I guess with when you are talking 1080 or 720, there's always some scaling to be done on these large size displays, but you have the ability with graphics to actually feed these displays pixel accurately, which is something that's people have been doing a lot or have done in the past, or different companies have done in the past. But there's definitely some newer techniques these days to feed these displays pixel accurately and to be able to display data and things like that, sponsorships and such. And just the workflows in that, how you're driving that display, how you're controlling that display. There's a lot of new technology out there today. And being able to harness it and be able to customize it for your production and what works for your staff, whether it be the football game one day, or it's hockey the next, or baseball, or whatever sport it is. Being able to take that technology and not kind of, I guess, have somewhat of a canned system where you don't have the ability to customize it for your actual production. These days, I find that the technology is moving so fast, and having the ability to format these displays pixel accurately, having the ability to integrate data, whether it's stats crew or social media data, things like that. It's really come to a point where we can control it all, and you can have a few operators sort of run the display, or have many, as well as some fascia displays and things like that. But the technology's really come around in the last few years, I think, and there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of good ideas and a great roadmap where people are going for the future and what they're going to be able to do. There's some displays out there, especially in the pro ranks, where displays are getting up to the 20,000 pixel wide displays, and how do you feed that pixel accurately? And what do you do, right? How many live feeds do you want to have, incorporated in there? And are you going to scale, or aren't you going to scale? Everybody wants to be pixel accurate, but hey, it's not too bad. If you get a scale, maybe 5 or 10%, and then that saves a ton of workflow, and it really streamlines it. Let's do it that way. But the technology's really come around. I think the ability to do really what you want to do and execute your vision is really, it's there today, and it's getting better every day. So.
Great. Another challenge that I'm sure you're all facing, I'm sure a number of you are facing, is the need for your control rooms to provide dual productions, not just the video boards, but broadcasting to whether it's ESPN3 or a streaming platform or your own website, whatever it is. Want to bring in Ryan now because you have the distinction of being the only D2 school to stream on ESPN3.
Right.
There's a number of D1 schools that can't even say that. So did people think you were crazy when you said you wanted to do that?
For sure, because, the guys are talking about the setups and everything, luckily we have one video board, and luckily we can't play any sports simultaneously on the weekends, so football is always at 1:30, and then if volleyball and soccer want to play after that, they can, but, I'm the only staff member, so there's no video board in the arena or soccer, or we'd have to add another staff member, obviously, so, it was a crazy idea because we got to the point where what we were doing was every event at home every week all year long, and so they kind of expected that. So there were weeks where we'd go Tuesday night volleyball, Wednesday soccer doubleheader, Friday night volleyball, Saturday football, with a video board show all on ESPN3 all week. And we just kind of set a crazy precedent to do that and didn't realize how much work the E3 platform would be. But, luckily we got through it this year and got enough. But again, just one set of equipment is all we had. One big rack that had a nice big shock mount on it. And we left volleyball at 9 o'clock at night on Friday, rolled it out to the trailer, took off the football, got it set up late Friday night, did a video board show through our truck, and did an ESPN3 show all that day. So, we want to do something that has never been done before. It was a great year. This year is going to be even better, just based on everything we've learned and figured out. But, the video board side, we're maxed out at football on Saturdays. That's it. We'd love to have one at the arena because they're having 40 or 50 events in there. There's 6 football games on a year, plus we show a couple movies and a couple other things. So, the D2 side, no different from a lot of these guys outside of the scale, but, we're always looking for students, always looking for staff, always looking, same challenges, just obviously at a really different scale.
Question for the group. How do you decide which sports get which resources? Obviously, we know the big money-making sports, but with all these Olympic sports, you've got, parents at home that want to watch their son or daughter in swimming or diving or golf. How do you decide, okay, I have this many staffers, I have this many full-time people, I have this many cameras. How do you make those decisions?
I can go. So Harvard has 42 Division I teams, and we broadcast 32 out of those. We don't have the same restriction as Ryan, where there's only one game at a time. We often have 4 or 5 games at once, because they don't really ask us when they set the schedule. And saying no is not really an option. We try to, as much as possible, treat all our sports the same. There is no distinction between Olympic and non-Olympic or revenue versus not revenue. They all have to get the same attention. And so if I need something, if there are too many games and I can't do it, then when I go to my boss or the athletic director, I can't say we can't do it. The question is always, okay, what will it take to do it? Do we need more people? Do we need more equipment? Or what's the base, the minimum level of production that we can get away with? Because they're not all ESPN3 productions. Some of them are just productions to show people what's going on. We stream tennis and squash, where we have one camera and shotgun mic per court, and we just show the court with a score bug, and that's it. There's no production value to it. But Karen was right. I mean, the target audience for these Olympic sports are the parents, and they don't really care about a big production. They just want to see their kids play, and they'll be really happy with anything you give them. And so we've found that even if we have to scale back, and instead of doing a 3-camera production for soccer with a sideline reporter and the whole, if we do a 1-camera production with no sideline, it's okay. We can stretch our resources and make it work, but it's much more important for us to get something on the air than to do a big production. It always has to be right. It's always in HD. It always looks good. Cameras are white balanced. The tripods are leveled. We have to do everything, but we make sure everything goes live. We don't say no.
Yeah, at a smaller school, just back to what I was talking about, we get everything done we can during the week, but there's no way to do 5 o'clock women's soccer game and a 7:30 men's soccer game right after football at 1:30. So we'll go over there, like Imry said, do as nice a show as we can, 2 or 3 cameras, scoreboard, play-by-play, and just get it on the air because, especially Division II, it's the same story. You have to understand your fan base and what they're looking for, and they love the E3 shows, but they obviously just want to see the games and want to be a part of that. And then in the spring, there's no lights at the softball field, and the games are 1 o'clock, and 100% of my staff is students. Every single job filled out is students. So, I mean, there's no, why aren't you doing more softball games? Well, they play at 1 and 2 on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And Saturdays are different because lacrosse, baseball, tennis, track are all at home too. So we get lucky that we do as much as we can during the week, and then obviously the weekends and the early days, everybody kind of understands. I know a lot of people in that same situation, but at the end of the day, people want to see the game, and they want the score and they want the clock. So you want to do the best you can outside, but the other days, they get the show on and make it look clear, crystal, and be the best it can be.
Well, this panel is not just about, video board and control room production, but also about how you actually engage your fans in the stands. Now, colleges have a built-in fan base, pretty much. I mean, you've got thousands of students who are all very excited about basketball, football, you name it. One of the things I thought was interesting from our call was that even though you all are trying to engage your fans themselves have different expectations of what they're going to see on that video board. I'm sure a Penn State football game is a lot different from a Harvard football game. Tell me a little bit about your philosophy towards programming your video board and how you use that to really, engage and amp up your fans.
I'm happy to go again. My first year at Harvard 3 years ago, we tried to do a lot. For football and for hockey, we have a timing sheet, of course, when we program everything that goes on pregame and during breaks on the video board. And we really want to make sure that the fans stay engaged at all times. We had graphics, we had features, we had interviews, we had on-board promotions, we had on-field promotions, we had trivia, we had little Zambonis chasing each other, and the fans had to guess which one is going to win this contest. There was constant activity on the video board with music, and it was very, very programmed. And we actually got complaints that it was too programmed. Our fan base is interesting because half the people in the crowd are Harvard students, and the other half are people who have been to every Harvard football game since 1945. They know what they want. They just want to sit there quietly and watch the game. And so too many things on the board and too many things on the PA system was just too much for them. And we got complaints to our athletic director. And he said, just stop. It's okay to just have nothing going on. Now, obviously, the video board can't be blank, but if you put out-of-town scores and then some quiet music and people can just chat, that's what they want. That's what they've been doing for 50 years. They're not interested in seeing the little Zambonis chase each other. And once we scaled it back, we actually got a lot of compliments. People were very happy that it's the kind of show that they expected. They see what they want on the video board. When there's action going on, they see replays, they see scores, they see stats, but it doesn't always require them to look up and pay attention, which is not something I predicted. It's not something that was correct or right for my previous jobs at other colleges, but it's what's right for our fan base. So I think Karen is right. You really have to gauge your target audience and figure out who's sitting there and what they want.
Well, there's definitely, when you've got, especially in the collegiate realm, where you have those 20-year-old students or, that age, and then you've got the parents that are coming in that are 50 or 60, they're looking for they're both looking for totally different, experiences during that event. And we found that also with the Tiger Cats is that, at one point the promotions were coming in, the marketing department, the sales department was sort of driving, what was happening on that display. And we ended up at one point just kind of killing it all, like you mentioned. We just toned it right down and sort of give everybody a little bit of what they want, but don't overwhelm everyone. Social media has been a big part of it, and it's really interesting to see that, obviously the younger generation tends to utilize social media a lot more than the older generation, but that older generation does utilize it, and they actually enjoy that as well. And it's not something that's really in your face, right? It's something that you can, just, have it up on the display and have, tweets and Facebook, images and things like that rolling through, and people get a chance to be interactive. But yeah, I think it's definitely a challenge to to be able to create an environment for a totally different generation, or maybe 3 generations. So it's definitely a challenge.
I agree. We've been putting a lot of social media on the board now as filler, and people love it because it's very hands-off. You can pay attention or not, you can participate or not. It's mostly automated, and it seems to be getting a lot of traction.
So we do have a little bit of a different philosophy, and I think part of that is also driven from the fact that with 31 teams and 800 student athletes, we're a self-sustaining athletic department. We don't take any student fees. We don't get any money from the university. So whatever we spend, we have to make or raise. So that either comes through TV dollars, of course, that comes through development, it comes from ticket sales, merchandise, all those things. So it's a never-ending challenge to figure out what is the right balance. So you're constantly trying to engage your fans. You're constantly engaging with with us. We're a Learfield property, and they're continually open to discussing how do we try to achieve that right balance. If they want to go and they want to sell something, how can we sell it so that it doesn't come across as being so commercially driven? Is there a way to turn that activation into an engagement so that the fan is both entertained, informed, and is not turned off by what's happening? That's the last thing you want to have happen. And it is a challenge, and it's a never-ending challenge, and you need to evaluate almost on a game-by-game basis. I would tell you that our fans in a 107,000-seat stadium, you're not going to make everybody happy, and that you have to realize that you're going to have fringe, that you could put, we could sponsor a moment of no sponsorship, and there would be people that would applaud it, and there would be other people that would think that was the stupidest thing in the world, and that's okay. You can't be afraid to try things, but you just need to realize that you're not going to make everybody happy. Secondly, in our venues, our football crowd is 100% different than our wrestling crowd. We've got a great wrestling program. We have an awesome venue. It's very much like Cameron Indoor for wrestling. The lights are out. It's a dark environment. It is not the most TV-friendly environment, as Brian can attest to. When BTN tries to televise, sometimes it can look dark, but our fans absolutely love it. And when their wrestling is going on in there and it's not a lot of action, you can hear a pin drop in the place. They don't want to see a lot of action on the video board. So that was a big difference than what we were doing at football. At ice hockey, programming there is different as well. And then for basketball, so you take it on a case-by-case basis. The only thing I would say is that we've got a great LED partner in A&C Sports where we rely on them to create about 90% of our graphics. So for each different venue, all of our venues have different specs. So we weren't smart enough to do the same specs in multiple venues. So that means that every single one's got its own content creation guide. And like I said, they create about 90% of those graphics. Last year, they created 2,000 graphics for football during the season. And that also makes our life a little bit easier on the staffing side. So I don't see us ever getting to a point where we say, wow, we figured it out. It's always going to change. You're right about students. We have 23,000 students at our football facility, but we also don't have the most robust wireless infrastructure. So in terms of them accessing social media, well, that may not really be possible. So just that's our perspective.
Are there any questions? Oh, one right here. I think we've got a mic coming up. There it is. Run, Jason. Oh, right here, sorry.
We just added a video board last November in our main arena in North Florida, and I'm trying to create content, I guess, that no one has ever seen before, and I'm kind of like flying by the seat of my pants because I've never run a video board before. How do you, from like the early days of your guys' careers, how did you make content that people had never seen before and that you had never seen before? What was the brainstorming process of that?
Question.
It's difficult to say. I've never seen content. I know it's going to sound funny, but I've never seen content I've never seen before. It always seems to be slightly borrowed from someone else, which is fine. You always look at what other people are doing and then figure out what you like and what you don't like, and then make it your own. But I would try to take the pressure off and not think about trying to create something completely from scratch. You know, there are some things that work and some things that don't, and I think as we've all said, there are some things that work for certain sports and certain fan bases and versus others. But do research, look at what other people are doing, and figure out what really, really doesn't work for you, and don't do it.
When you say that it's something that no one's ever seen before, are you just talking format and just how you're formatting that content?
Our fan base hasn't seen it before, so they don't really know what to expect. And our athletic department doesn't know what to expect, so how do you create expectations to meet?
Right.
Well, I think you just said it right there. I think that you need to have a discovery meeting with your athletic director, with the key stakeholders who that when your first game's over, or maybe even at halftime, or at the end of the first quarter, or before your team even takes the field, is giving you feedback on what they're seeing. You don't want to have those discussions for the first time after the game's already started or your gates are open. You want to have it now, and you want to establish collectively who's helped finance this and what are their expectations. And if you don't know what they're expecting, then you are kind of shooting with your eyes closed. Collectively, you don't want to be the one making all those decisions, because you have other people that should have a say and an input, in my opinion. And then also, if they don't have a lot of expectations now, then I would start small, and I would do a few things really, really well, and then I would go from there. It's kind of starting with the fundamentals. There's no sense in doing a 12-camera show if you can't do a 2-camera show well. And there's no reason on having 8 video inputs for replay if you can't get in and out of 1 or 2 really well. So I think I would take advantage of the fact that you're starting, and then just look at the end of the day, what are you hoping to accomplish? Because once you do let the cat out of the bag, there's no way of going back.
Yeah, and I just went through the same exact thing with football last year. I mean, it's first year of our 12 schools in our conference. There's only 2 other video boards in the whole entire conference, any sport, anywhere. And so everyone stared at the whole game, the whole season. I would just stand up in the press box and look down, and every play ended, everybody looks up. And the AD, the presidents, everybody's looking there because the small school makes that big of an investment. They want to know what's on it every single second. And so the feedback came back. You never had to ask for it. They always texted me during the game, always came back, because when we're spending that money, you know, we need to make it back eventually, somehow, some way. So the ads are always the most important thing to me, because those people are in the building watching. You know, there's only 3,000 people in the stadium, so everybody's watching the video board. So I think, as I said, you're going to figure it out quick, what's working, what's not, because people are going to tell you, and people are going to know because they're putting that much time in it, that much effort into it. So I would definitely start smaller than you think, because it's going to go by fast. The game's going to, I mean, it's basketball, right? It's in the arena. So the game's going to be there. You're going to have plenty of time to show replays. You know, go get a replay wipe ad, get a couple other spots here and there, get an interview ad, but, you know, make them understand that this is your first year doing it, just like everybody else. I mean, it's going to be a process.
I think, and just designing content, you know, the creative, you know, the artwork and the creation of it, that's something that you, obviously, you and your, you know, your team will have to figure out. But the actual, you know, rundown of the game and the format of your show, I think, you know, as you mentioned, that's something that is quite similar to most facilities, right? You've got, you know, when gates open, what are you doing, you know, while gates are open, people are taking their seats. Your intro and how that's formatted. You know, there's a lot of this going on, and I think it's going to be it'll be somewhat similar to a lot of other shows. So you know, reach out and discuss it with, you know, a lot of other people. I can send you a lineup if you want of ours, and just how we, you know, format the show and what we do, and you know, for halftime and quarter breaks and things like that. So, but yeah, I think it's pretty generic in some ways on how you know, how the show is actually formatted.
I think Jim said it best, and don't try to do everything at once. You know, we meet with coaches and administrators, and they have a million ideas, and we just say, hey, what are the 3 you want to accomplish? And, you know, bring it down to a smaller level, and then you can build from there, but don't do everything. Start here and work your way up, and then let things come naturally. Don't force it, because the one thing you don't want to do is force it, because it comes across to the fans, and then you can kill the environment very quick if you're forcing things.
I would also take advantage of the opportunity you have before your first event. I'd make sure that your coaches, your administrators, that they see those things before then, because one, you're showing that you respect their opinion. I think I've worked with a lot of coaches that are all over the gamut, some that could not tell you a single thing that we put on a video board during the whole game, and then I could tell you other coaches that have pinpoint things that I'm wondering, really? how did you actually pick that out at some point when you think you're not watching the board, might be paying attention to something else, whatever. But you don't want any surprises to happen. But you also said, I think it's great that you have those big goals, but I think typically a budget is going to dictate what other things you can do. So if you want to create things that no one else has ever done, usually to a lot of people that might sound expensive. So I would guess you already have a budget established.
We actually, well, I actually said is we added it this past November, so we just got through our first basketball season with it.
Okay.
So it was, I basically designed everything from the graphics to the intro video, all that stuff, and it was a lot of hours to put in.
Sure.
But it ended up being something that I really wanted to see. So like, I guess I had to measure myself to look at what people expect and then try to go with that. I might have rung a bell that can't be unrung.
Ding.
Any other questions? Oh, right back here.
I'm curious, is it an individual decision or a team decision or a conference decision as to whether you guys can show controversial plays or plays under review?
And for us, it's a league decision, especially if for hockey, it's most relevant for us. We're in ECAC hockey, and they have specific rules as to what we can show, what we can't. The overall guidance is not to incite a riot, and so, if something really controversial happened, use your best judgment. And we're also in charge of official replay, and so if the refs are clearly skating to see something that's going to be reviewed, don't show it on the board quest yet, because you don't want to, you don't want the fans to think that they have a better angle than the refs and then disagree with the refs. And so there are specific guidance that come from the league for us.
It depends on the sport for us in the SEC. Like football, when they go to review, we go to what they're seeing on TV. We go to that feed in venue. So once they go to that, we go to that in venue and they're seeing the same thing. Basketball, kind of more, we kind of show whatever we want up until a point, don't want to go overboard. And then baseball, softball, very restrictive. Other sports, it's just sport by sport and how closely they monitor it or don't monitor it.
As a proud member of the Big Ten Conference, we gladly adhere to whatever the conference wants us to do. But it also, that policy has evolved. I remember, unfortunately, 15 years ago, running a replay that we shouldn't have ran and still have that letter from the conference. And then eventually the replay system came into play, and it was very conservative. It was you don't show anything. And then the conference has evolved to the point where on the football side, they do allow in stadium to show whatever you have. So we treat that a little differently in Beaver Stadium than some other venues do. We have about 12 cameras working on a football game and a couple of feeds that we get from network truck. We use everything that we have on a replay. So our switcher will zoom in, take advantage of whatever they can to try to show what we know, or at least what we believe to be the case. Now, we had a case last year in a big game where we had a big issue, and it ended up getting some national media attention because I could spend an hour describing it, but what we showed up on the stadium showed one thing, but what the official said showed another. And so the word controversy is appropriate with official replay. Now, basketball for us in the Big Ten, they don't want you showing controversial things. In hockey, yeah, so it really does. It goes sport by sport. But then essentially, the person that's in the control room is responsible for adhering to that policy. So it's really important that you make sure you communicate that with your staff so that they understand it, because we're Penn Staters producing a show, and when we're doing a stream, our goal is to do a neutral stream. But when you're doing the video board show and you're working with a lot of students and the game's getting exciting, it's very natural for them to get emotionally committed to what's happening in there. So it's important that you educate them to the fact that they've got to be able to separate themselves and not do something that is going to make the institution look bad, to make the department look bad. So that's important.
All right, we have one more question right back here.
It's just a quick question for Auburn. How much was the motivation to build a bigger video board than Texas A&M? Oh, you can answer it.
I was part of all those discussions going into it, and we honestly never discussed the size of the board. It kind of came about based on what existing structure was there. So it actually cost us less money to use what had been ad panels and random other signs that weren't LED and just made it all LED, and that's where we came up with our large number, which happened to be much larger than Texas A&M.
All right, well, unfortunately, we're out of time. If there are any other questions, I'd encourage you guys. Whoa, sorry about that. I'd encourage you guys to catch up with these guys afterwards. But thank you all so much for taking part. I appreciate it.